Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to today's explainer, where we're taking a fascinating and honestly a slightly surprising look right into our very own kitchens. We often think of our daily meals as just sources of nourishment, right? But there is actually a hidden story within the ingredients we use every single day. Today, we're decoding a deeply important piece of research to understand a completely invisible threat that might just be sitting in your pantry right now. So, what Group 1 carcinogen is secretly lurking in your everyday cooking oil? Now, listen, the goal of this explainer is absolutely not to create panic. Not at all. Instead, we're looking directly at the hard science. Based on the comprehensive research of Dr. Tai Chung Jing, who's a renowned expert in oncology and nutritional science, we're going to unpack exactly how a known dangerous toxin ends up in common cooking oils. And more importantly, we'll look at how your body is actually equipped to fight it off. Chapter 1. The Invisible Oil Crisis. Uncovering the Origin.
To understand how to protect ourselves, we really need to understand where this microscopic threat even comes from. It doesn't start in a laboratory. It actually begins thousands of miles away on agricultural farms. I'd like to introduce you to benzopyrene, or BAP for short. The World Health Organization actually classifies BAP as a Group 1 carcinogen. That means there is definite, concrete evidence that it causes cancer in humans. Now, normally, most of us associate BAP with breathing in cigarette smoke or vehicle exhaust or maybe eating heavily charred barbecue. But as Dr. Tai's research highlights, the European Union and the US EPA are actually tracking it as a high-priority food pollutant. It's somehow sneaking into our diet, specifically through soybean oil.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly how the contamination begins. It starts all the way back on those farms during the soybean drying process. Let's compare the methods used by major exporters like the US, Brazil, and Argentina. On one hand, you've got direct fire drying. This is a much cheaper, traditional method used by a lot of smaller farms. They literally burn wood, coal, or heavy oil and just blow that hot, smoky exhaust directly over the soybeans to dry them out. On the other hand, you have mechanical drying, which uses clean heat. So what's the problem? Well, that direct fire smoke is absolutely packed with BAP. In fact, research shows that soybeans dried with direct fire can end up with 10 to 50 times more BAP than the ones dried mechanically. That's a massive difference. This creates what we can think of as the soybean Trojan horse. See, soybeans have a really rough outer skin with a huge surface area, which acts kind of like a sponge for all that toxic smoke. But here is the critical scientific twist. BAP is highly lipophilic, which just means it really loves fat. So when those smoke-coated beans are crushed and pressed in a factory, the BAP molecules actually abandon the dry skin and dissolve straight into the freshly extracted crude oil. And even after standard physical refining processes, these tiny fat-loving molecules are incredibly stubborn. They just hitch a ride all the way into the final bottled product you buy at the store. Chapter 2. The Toxin's Inner Journey. From the pan, straight to your cells. Once that oil makes it into your kitchen and you consume it, the biological journey gets pretty wild. Step 1 is simple dietary intake. We just eat the food cooked in the contaminated oil. But step 2 is where the plot really thickens. You see, BAP on its own actually isn't directly harmful. It only becomes dangerous when it hits your liver. Your liver, just trying to do its job by breaking down the chemical, accidentally metabolizes the BAP into a highly reactive substance called BPDE. And this leads right into step 3, DNA adduct formation, which is where this newly formed chemical literally locks onto your cellular DNA. You can think of BPDE as an active warhead deployed right inside your cells. BPDE physically binds to your DNA. So when your cells naturally try to divide and replicate, this physical roadblock causes replication errors. Over time, it directly mutates critical genes, specifically tumor-suppressing genes like TP53 and PTEN, as well as oncogenes like KRAS. When these specific genetic safety switches are flipped off by the mutations, abnormal cells can start multiplying out of control. And remember, Dr. Tai points out that this is a cumulative, dose-dependent process. Every little bit adds up over the years. Chapter 3. Naming 5 cancers, the long-term health risks. Knowing exactly how this warhead operates, let's look at the actual fallout, starting with upper body cancer risks. The connections here are pretty striking. First, lung cancer isn't just a risk for smokers. Non-smokers are at risk too, especially if they're inhaling aerosolized oil while cooking. Then there's stomach cancer, which is caused by the toxin making direct contact with your stomach lining. But you'll really want to pay special attention to esophageal cancer. Dr. Tai's research notes that the super common habit of eating very hot food causes microscopic thermal injuries to the esophagus. When you combine those tiny little burns with a BAP toxin in your meal and maybe throw some alcohol into the mix, the absorption rate and therefore the cancer risk multiply dramatically. And the risk doesn't stop there. It continues as the food digests. For colorectal cancer, there's a really dangerous synergy at play. High-fat diets naturally stimulate bile acids in your gut. Your gut bacteria then transform these into secondary bile acids that actually promote tumor growth, and that perfectly teams up with BAP to accelerate cancer cell development. Finally, liver cancer. Because the liver acts as the body's primary chemical processing plant, it unfortunately takes the heaviest, most direct hit from that toxic BAPD warhead, which leads to chronic inflammation and cellular damage. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the global inconsistency in how we actually regulate this stuff. It's truly alarming. When comparing maximum residue limits, the European Union has a very strict limit of 2 micrograms per kilogram. The US FDA suggests limits as low as 0.2, but regions like Taiwan and China, they allow up to 10 micrograms. That is a massive discrepancy. A limit of 10 means a population is legally allowed to consume 5 times the amount of a Group 1 carcinogen compared to Europe. And because carcinogens don't really have a safe threshold, long-term consumption, even within those higher legal limits, carries a very real, very chronic risk. Chapter 4, Your Anti-Cancer Strategy, Fighting Back with Nutrition. But, hey, here's the good news. We're definitely not defenseless. First up is your cruciferous defense. We are talking about everyday veggies like broccoli, cabbage, kale, and radish. These aren't just healthy foods. They are practically medicinal. They contain specific compounds that induce a liver enzyme called GST. You can think of GST as your body's specialized cleanup crew. By simply eating these vegetables 3 to 5 times a week, you naturally boost your liver's ability to quickly process and clear that BAP right out of your system before it has a chance to mutate your DNA. Your second line of defense is the antioxidant shield. When that BPDE warhead goes off inside your cells, it generates massive amounts of reactive oxygen species. Think of it as molecular shrapnel that just shreds your DNA. Well, vitamin C and E, along with selenium, act as a chemical shield. They physically capture and neutralize those free radicals, stopping the oxidative damage right in its tracks. Honestly, this is the exact scientific reason why nutritionists are always telling you to eat the rainbow. And third, we have omega-3 anti-inflammatories. Sourced from fish like salmon or mackerel, or plant sources like flaxseed oil, omega-3 fatty acids do something really incredible. You see, tumors absolutely thrive in an environment of chronic inflammation. Omega-3s act kind of like a biological coolant, shutting down those inflammatory pathways and keeping your cell membranes structurally strong. That makes it so much harder for toxins to cause any lasting damage. So the crucial point is how we apply all this daily with some highly practical kitchen strategies. Number 1, only use your frying oil once. Seriously, never reuse it. Reheating oil creates a massive spike in carcinogens. Number 2, rotate your oils. Don't just stick to soybean oil. Cycle through olive, sesame, or canola oil to diversify and reduce any single exposure risk. Number 3, always buy highly refined oils from reputable, transparent brands. And finally, eat 25 to 35 grams of fiber every day. Fiber acts like a broom, right? It sweeps toxins through your digestive tract quickly so they don't just sit there and absorb into your colon walls. I really want to highlight this fantastic quote from Dr. Tai Cheng Zhang that pretty much anchors this whole explainer. The human body has a precise detoxification system. We don't need to panic, just eat smarter. I just love this because it's incredibly empowering. Our biology is amazingly resilient, and it's perfectly built to handle environmental toxins, just as long as we fuel it with the right nutritional tools. So next time you walk down the cooking oil aisle, staring at those rows of golden liquid, which bottle will you choose to protect your family's DNA? Remember, you hold the power to outsmart these hidden dangers through the simple, everyday choices you make right in your kitchen. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive. Stay curious, stay informed, and I'll see you in the next explainer.